Good morning from the Hashknife. You see that? That may have been the first prototype of any hydrant ever made in modern history. I'm just kidding, but it sure seems like it. It's failed on us. I can't get the rod out of it. I can't replace the parts in it. And so there's another one that's just exactly like it over here in this garden spot that you can't probably really see well, that we're rehabilitating, put into some better use to get the tractor sitting there. We've done a bunch of work, but anyway, we're going to tear these hydrants out and we're going to replace them and add a hydrant in more strategic places, along with a watering post to water the stallion and breeding mares in a small breeding pasture, and then the one that adjoins it that's 40 acres or so, where we can put steers, other horses, heifers, sometimes the bulls. Anyway, nice fresh water for them out of a drinking post instead of doing it into a tub and having a float on it where the water gets warm and mossy and murky, and you got to keep changing it all the time, and nobody likes that. Before we can get started, several things have to happen. I got to clear this corral so that I could move this stallion and his mare I got with him. This is Cinnamon and Bentley. Get them moved over here, but I had to move the butcher steers out of here. They can't come in. They have to stay out in that pasture. They're on water. I got to isolate those two, a gelding and filly, and then the mares and colts are over on the other side of that fence line. So I've got a buffer between the stallion and these other horses, and I got the steers out. So we are about ready to go. Well, there's this other hydrant, and as you can see, it's pretty worn out, pretty tired, and it feeds this garden over here we're rehabbing, like I said. And we've got some of our equipment put together, ready to go, ready to put in these holes. But first we got to excavate all the way along to the corner of the garden, place a hydrant halfway down the windbreak to the end of it, place another one, and then go through and place that post at the very end. Meantime, we're going to have a post sticking right there at this white flag. This, as you probably already know if you followed us, is the well right here at the house. And we get to go down there, and I need to close that valve with the red handle on it so we can isolate that water to the garden in that area without disrupting water flow to the house. And we got some of those watering posts, also drinking posts in the corrals. Closes pretty easily. I replaced this valve here several years ago because it didn't move and didn't isolate. So that's good. Don't want to break it. Good and snug. And everything else looks good. So water's isolated. We're ready to cut into that line, tap into it. So the next thing to do is take this brace out, take these wires off so that excavator can come right down through next to those trees, between those trees and the fence line. As he exits the garden, we'll put in a hydrant at the end of this windbreak and then come right down through here. See our white line where we made a mark for the power company and the utility companies to go right at the top of that hill. We'll place that water in there. Well, there you have it. Doesn't take long to demo. Sure takes a while to put it up though. So we are completely ready to have that excavator come through. We got the first couple of scrapes of dirt with this bucket and hit sandstone, which we kind of expected, and that stuff is tough. It is ugly to pull out of there, so this is going to be kind of a little bit longer job. But we got a couple of local guys here, known since they were little guys, literally preschool, so they do good work and they'll make short order of it. Our trench is pretty good and deep, about 6.5 foot. But we had to stop up here because we ran into, believe it or not, some limestone. And it's a little bit harder than this sandstone, that rock. And you see, he made it that far in about 3 hours. So we got to stop and redo and maybe come from the other direction. Might be able to pull some of that up, or we may have to get a jackhammer in here. So he continued on and started trenching little bit further over to see if we can get away from that shelf and hopefully get into some better digging. And actually he did really well. He was able to pull this out in a course of about 3 hours. So he really is smoking down the fence line here. So we got a hydrant to set there, and then he'll turn the corner. We'll put that drinking post in. The trench is basically dug, and we didn't have to get a jackhammer for this area of limestone here. You can see that it's kind of made a shelf up here and kind of taking a rise. Goes for about 30 yards and then drops back down. So we're going to have a hydrant kind of right at the edge where it drops back down. That's where we planned it. We're still going to do that, but it's about 4 foot. Frost line, you want to be around 4.5 foot here in this country if you can. So we're going to solve that by insulating over the top of the pipe and putting some bubble wrap over the top, and then over the top of that will be a couple of inches in foam board insulation. I've done that before. I also used a PVC pipe, 4-inch PVC pipe, to run a 1-inch or 1.25 inch line through in order to insulate it, and that works pretty well. Creates a dead air space with insulation on top. So we'll do that, pressure test our lines, and then be ready to fill her back in. Would you believe that our poly pipe turned into regular pipe? And it's not even galvanized. It's just straight black pipe. It looks really good. It's in good shape. So we cut it right here and put some threads on it. And now we are going to put a collar and a barbed fitting for 3/4 inch pipe. That'll hook to our first hydrant. And then we can lay the rest of our 1-inch pipe. Here's the trench and what's left of it. That's all that's got to be dug out. And then we can start laying all of our pipe and our hydrants, do a pressure test overnight. And if it works, then we get to cover it all up. Here's our connection where we had to take a 90-degree turn. And I'm looking for any kind of leakage at that connection. And I'll travel down the pipe a little bit. Everything looks nice and dry. That's a good sign. We like that. Here's the other hydrant. The last one in line before that post. And we've got the water strung out there so that we're not filling our ditch and having to work in some muck. That looks good. Again, no leaks there. So here's the one at the end of the garden. And this post is not leaking. We got water flowing out there. We got water flowing everywhere, so the pressure's a little bit reduced. Overall, we got 3 hydrants, and I got the post shut off at the other end for now. But this is a different type of post too. This is not that I'm advertising for them, but it's yard hydrant, piece of pipe, and all of your internals for your flow up and a backflow happens just like it does in a well right there where you get your water. And when that is closed, it drains back just like a regular hydrant. But if that hydrant fails, you don't have to dig everything up. You can make your connection just by sliding it into a coupling that's supplied on the other side of that brass fitting that goes into that gray tube. And we're going to try them. Never used them before, but it's worth a shot. One thing you always want to be careful of when you're out here are rattlesnakes. And as you'll notice, we figured this guy came along behind us. We might have spooked him out of some.
He might have been somewhere in between.
Yeah. Could have been in the trench last night, fell in, or tried to cross this morning. But if you watch this, he's a little unhappy. We're not going to reach down there and get him.
Nope.
He's on his own. So, just some of those little things that you got to watch for.
Yeah.
No matter what is going on around you, you got to keep an eye on not just the task, but all of the hazards around it, and that's one of them. So now the backfill process takes place. And as you can see, I've filled this trench in most of the way. Fill all that spoil pile back into the trench, and then work it back and forth. And they'll put a wheel on that with this skid steer to help pack it down. And you see that tire track right at the front of his bucket. He's already done that, and now he's just kind of smoothing it, dressing it up. In the meantime, we've got one hydrant and one watering post to fill back in, and you can see this T, or well, it's a 90 where it needs to go. We're going to fill that in and push some gravel on top of that just to protect it a little bit from the big rocks, and then fill the rest of that in. Fill in gravel on the bottom of the post, watering post, and one hydrant. Now they're going to throw a load of wash gravel on this while he's holding this down. And as Kevin was explaining to me earlier, they like to put gravel over the top of this so that if they ever have to dig this up and they're digging with that excavator, they can start to see the gravel. They know to stop and start using the shovel so you don't bust a bunch of lines up. And there's the dirt on top. And he'll make short order of this hole. There, he's got himself an avenue now where he can just come across and just start pushing. This last hole is where this drinking post is, and I want it nice and straight and level. So I'm going to kind of cheat. Instead of using a level, I'm going to use the best level you can get and fill this bowl up while he pours this gravel in, and then I'm gonna watch this level here, try to keep that just as straight as possible, as we know that water is going to give us a level. That's good. Look at that. Give that a little shake, and this is about as level as you can possibly get. Oh yeah, look at that. Good. Now we'll finish filling, dressing it up. You guys will give me a bill for almost nothing, and I'll pay him with almost nothing. And we went ahead and stuck the cage in here as we were backfilling. Pushed these uprights down with the front of that skid steer, and then I'm going to come back, and it's pretty solid, but we can always tamp it a little more, especially that one's got a big bell on the bottom of it, so it's going to be a little looser, but that helps protect this post from any cattle or horses pushing up against it, and that way we don't break it off or anything, but we still got water flowing through there. I can clean that bowl up. They can push that paddle down, get some nice fresh water. Comes at a good rate. They can drink it without it spilling out all over, but not so slow. And oh, look how level that is. I didn't like that. But not so slow that they can't get enough. I got to take the remaining gravel now and try to catch most of it with his bucket. And then he's going to lay this around this base so that when these cows and horses splash water out of here, which they will do, it's not horrible on these posts because they're demand only. They just don't have a stagnant set of water level sitting there. But it will make a big difference on trampling it down and losing some mud and dirt to some erosion. There we go. And then we'll spread that around and be complete. Then it comes to the bad words we don't want to say, like fencing. We'll put some panel in here so we don't have any barbed wire around it. We've got just panel, so the animals get to fighting and pushing each other while they're all decide to drink at once. that they're pushing into a bare panel, corral panel, instead of a barbed wire fence. Galen's gonna throw some weld on here, some magic. He's had to learn how to weld again after that first pass. That perishable skill, he picked it right back up again, so that's just normal. It's easy for these kids. Apparently these things don't position themselves. What do you think?
It's not pretty, but it'll work.
He always says that.
To finish the water project, we completed the post over here and then demolitioned the wire fence that continues towards the west there that went up to this corner, and we placed in some posts there and next to the water and so on and so forth until we got to the end there. And there's just the two panels. There's this panel right here, that panel right there, and then about a 4-foot wide man gate, which we used a old panel, cut it at that end right there, and we added an additional stay in the middle because you can see that they're just not close enough apart. So we added a second stay in the middle, welded that on, grinded everything down, added on 2 hinges about 6 inches long, and welded them directly to the main post. So now this gate can swing freely open. We cut off the 4 bottom posts, or excuse me, 4 bottom rails, and welded them on there. It's not a beautiful job, but it'll get the job done. And there you have it. We have paneling and metal work all complete on a high pressure point in the fence.